when they drop them off, they're gonna have the same problem. They don't usually swap it out.
See, that's what I talked about sometimes. That way I can kind of see, you know, and then I know when I go down here.
Okay.
But it does cut off on about 20 to 30 minutes from one to another, you know. It's so, and then they got that new family.
Really quiet.
Yeah, it's nice.
Just too
It's nice. Talked in there with Nathan about.
When's the cleanup again?
15th, wasn't it?
April 15th?
No.
May.
Six.
May 15th.
If I got the right clean. This is right one. Yeah.
There was an arrest
Okay, so me.
today,
Okay.
last night, big arrest.
Yes, this is all.
Whole thing.
Yeah,
Everybody, this is your.
You're supposed to-
Everyone has it.
you have
You get yours.
yours.
You get yours.
What's the number?
You're supposed to have it memorized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's scary.
I'm amazed.
Paying the drop box.
I'm amazed.
That's the number.
16
Ours,
Yeah.
like when we travel.
So we I think it's-
It's just me.
You must have. And obviously. Good.
That's
They're gonna start action.
Well, it's worked right now. Right now, it's probably. I think it's. Excuse me. Or anyone.
I always say that.
Oh,
Sorry, Forrest.
It's something that you just gotta do. Or you do it better you get, so you know, you're a little bit behind.
That's helpful, boy.
But I try to. You're gonna, as a male, it's very much chance to roll right now. You go all fundraisers, different things, so I say, you know, usually also, it's good.
Yeah.
It's still up there.
Good skill there.
Call this meeting to order, Stuart City Council special meeting, tentative agenda, Monday, March 27th, 6 p.m. Council chambers call to order. Dolly.
Here.
Here. Morgan. Here. Kava.
Here.
Renslow.
Here,
Need a motion to approve the agenda.
so moved.
Second.
Second by Kava. How do you vote? Dolly.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Morgan. Yes. Kava.
Yes.
Renslow.
Yes.
Okay. 3, city property liability insurance. A couple of the council people, well, Mike, Christina's here, and utilities already voted and went ahead with United Risk Services.
Can I just make a comment or just a brief statement? So first of all, on the city side of things, I would really like to thank you for putting forth all the effort that you had with trying to get information. I know it's difficult. I want to apologize for the email that you received last week, completely inappropriate. Third of all, I don't know that if since the utilities already voted, that it's really a moot point for us to have to drag this out and put her through a whole nother presentation. I mean, they made their decision, and ours is all or nothing.
Yeah, you can go with.
So can I jump in?
Yeah, you have it.
So yeah, I'd just like to reiterate what Christina said, after I saw that email, I thought how unprofessional for an appointed board member to try to dissuade a local company from even putting forth a bid. I was shocked to see that. So I appreciate that you stuck with it, on there. Another thing is that for me being elected, and I don't know, I can't speak for the other members, it's hard for me to see an appointed board make a decision for the entire city. You know, that should be a joint decision, so you don't have to put two presentations, one for this entity, one for the council. You know, I feel it's really unfair to the rest of the council that they didn't come to that meeting, they can't hear that. So hopefully in the future, you know, I don't know what we can do, but to stress that we need to sit down and make these decisions together. That would be in the best interest for the citizens of Stuart. But I would agree, unless the other council members, they should be allowed to ask them.
I did forget one thing. So I've given a lot of thought to what Crystal said the last time. And I think next year or whenever, if we do these things, it would be nice that if we did get the information from the insurance company, not to release it and make it confidential until we have both numbers. And I know we can't make that decision for the utilities, but I feel like they should have waited before to release that information, to make sure you ensure that you have both bids together. So that way nobody can see anything, because it does put you at a disadvantage, and it's not fair to either company, because then you're bidding against each other. So, I mean, so maybe next year we make sure we don't release any information until both of them are done. But we ask both of them at the same time, and so we know what we're bidding, and we're not blocking anybody or pulling tooth and nail to get the required information. They both have the same stuff, and we release it at the same time.
Yep.
So
It's
that
the
would just
spirit
be
of
my ask
cooperation
for in the future.
instead of being divisive and not wanting to sit down and have that joint conversation, which we should be having. I don't know what the rest of the council feels like. I know Christine and I feel that way, but, you know, and I can only speak for myself and reiterate what she says, so.
I missed the last meeting. Why is it that, has this always been the practice on how we've gone about this as a city?
We always renew, which was the current insurance we had. And then last year, or the year before, we asked for another bid. We had, I think we bid it out. We received proposal.
Right, I'm saying the utility board, I mean, obviously we've always just renewed.
Yes.
But are they the ones that make that decision, or why is it in this case that they made this decision before the city council? Like you're saying, they're appointed by the city
Because
council.
EMC bids it separate, ICAP bids it together. So EMC bids a policy for utilities, they bid a policy for city. ICAP, which is Town and Country, their policy is as one entity, because we are legally one entity. And the utilities, some of the utility board members view that as not accurate, but it is one entity. And so that's the way they have to bid it versus what utilities. But if utilities are going with EMC, we can't really, I mean, we could, but
However,
without having a joint meeting and all of us sitting down and discussing it, it's hard. That's why I asked for a joint meeting the last couple times, so we could all sit down and be one body and discuss it and all have a discussion on it.
when you have 3 council members that might not be able to make it to the utility board, that puts you guys at a disadvantage because you don't hear all the discussion that goes on. And nobody in the audience was even given a chance to ask questions.
Yeah, I mean,
Nobody.
I personally asked, I thought it was, for me, I thought it was interesting that one of the board members who used to be the insurance agent on the policy before they were a member, they were the ones that did the EMC policy, was up here asking all the questions and kind of, it just took a very aggressive tone and was very disrespectful to our people at Town and Country, it was odd to me because it seems like there appeared to be a conflict. And I mean, I've been put in my place when it comes to conflicts. So a conflict is when it appears to be a conflict, you should be stepping back. And I went to ask the question, I was denied. So they don't allow any discussion besides their board members. And I mean, that's how it is. So it was odd to me.
It's
I mean, and
almost
you've all
like the
seen that
public is
email.
not, they don't want to hear from the public. And I think you all remember when we were discussing you know, trying to help them out with their project, you know, the comments made by the president, you know, it's just, you have those ratepayers come up there, it's just, it was surprising to me. It was surprising to me, and I try not to take that way, you know, I'll listen to people, you know, and I can disagree and get along with people afterwards, that's the way it should be. But, yeah, so, again, like I said, we don't need to drag it out too long. I don't know if the other board member or council members have questions. Right now, again, thank you for sticking with it. I know other people probably would have just said, why am I gonna bother? You know, it's almost like you had 3 agents working against you, you know? But I do appreciate you taking the time.
I will say one thing, Janice. Publicly, I think all of us should apologize to you, to Joe that was up here presenting. From us up here, you guys laid out all your numbers right in front of your competitor. Then they asked for more time to get numbers to us. That is not fair. And if we get in trouble for that, we deserve it. So I want to say sorry for the way that was handled.
I completely agree. I mean, I think at the utility board side, they should have stopped it from the beginning, and then we could have stopped it on our end and said, do not release these numbers. That's why I've said, next year, let's not release any numbers and keep them confidential, because it is not fair to you to have to lay all your cards out and then be like, please, I mean, and I'm sure Danielle would feel the same if it was the other way around. Like, that's just not the right thing, and it's not fair to you guys to have to sit through that either. No, I completely agree.
Okay, I guess we came to the conclusion that we received a proposal from ICAP, we received a proposal from EMC. This is the thing that I have, this is the bottom line. The proposal from EMC is 198,315. The proposal from ICAP is 219,780.
Need a motion?
If you wanna go with whatever you wanna do.
I'll make the motion to go with EMC.
I'll second it.
Moved by Morgan, second by Renzo. How do you vote, Dolly?
Yes.
Kirkpatrick?
Yes.
Morgan? Yes. Cobal?
Yes.
Renslow?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, ladies. We appreciate your work.
Now, for Chip.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to connect.
Uh-oh.
So I'll just dive right in there. So you got the paper copies that are in front of you. The bound material is what was emailed last Friday. I'll just hit, there's a couple brief items to cover on the loose paperclip handout, if you don't mind. So I know that the cost that we're looking at for its overall phase 4 is a material number, of course, the most expensive of any of the phases. But I think as you evaluate that, if you look at the track record of the first 3 phases, there's a clear record of success. So what this first sheet does, Exhibit A, it lays out, and this, Corey, you had referenced some of the questions looking at the first 3 phases.
Mhm.
So this lays out the valuation from the first 3 phases. The fiscal years and valuation years are at the left. So as phase 1 is the oldest, of course, so that's built and grown over time. And for next fiscal year, it's about 6.6 million. The 3 together are totaled in column G. Phase 3 is just beginning to pick up on the tax rolls in column F. The 3 total 13.6 million in column G. That in aggregate is about 16% of the city's taxable valuation. So the 13.6 million as a percentage of the total in column J is about 16%. And just the rest of the city's valuations is shown in column I. And there are a lot of other factors that go into this, of course, but you can see the city's levy in column K, how that it's been helped to decline over time as the valuation from the 3 housing phases have increased. So valuation's gone up, levy's gone down. So that's kind of the background on that page. The next sheet, Exhibit B with the gray shading, is a lot of the benefit that I think the city will realize from phase 4 is that there's a blight designation. So when there is a blight designation, expected to alleviate blight, it's fair to say, and please correct me if this isn't right. I think generally in the east part of town, the first 3 phases have helped spruce up that side of town. So there's an explicit designation from phase 4 that there is a blight designation. You don't have the requirement of an LMI set aside. So there's an economic value for that difference. The first 3 phases, so if you look at the top half of the table, the first 3 phases have the blight set aside, and those dollars have done good in the city and will continue to do so. So if you assume a valuation of 10 million over a period without the blight designation on the first 3 phases, that TIF is limited to 11 years. So over 11 years, it's not a perfect even amount. So this is just a hypothetical illustration. So please consider that. You'd collect about $1,988,000 of TIF revenue. That's total TIF less the blight set aside is that net amount, 1.98 million. When you compare that to row 2, when there's not a blight set aside requirement, that collection period over 11 years is 3,041,000 in column G. There's a further benefit from having the blight designation. You don't have the 11-year clock on phase 4. So you've got, frankly, now under Iowa law, there is no time limit on that TIF collection. So this is just as valuable as I think it's a 1989 or 1990 urban renewal area. And I've got a map of that. The original Stuart urban renewal area, there's also no sunset on that. That's why Stuart's able to do so much. You have this built up TIF that's grown in valuation over time, and under current law, it doesn't have a sunset. What we've been trying to do, bringing in all of these budgetary discussions late last year, earlier this year, is just trying to get kind of a financial picture laid out for the city, is managing that TIF cash flow so it doesn't overly burden the city's tax base, so you continue to have enough dollars to fund day-to-day operations.
Giving Mike Johnson numerous amounts of money to fix up homes. He's flipped $2 million worth of homes,
That's
not
phenomenal.
including the one he just got done with.
I hope
Houses
he
that we
keeps
were
doing it.
gonna tear down, and he fixed them up,
I
put
think
them
he's
back
done
on the tax roll.
for a little while.
And you just did
Well, that's his choice, of course. So, but if you look at it over a 20-year period in column H, the blight set aside versus no blight, that's an economic difference just in terms of the city still collects the blight with the set aside of course. So this compares just general use. Be sure to clarify that. The economic benefit in column H is about 4.3 million. So this kind of financial comparison is what I think helps make phase 4 more viable. That you don't have the limitation, blight has done good, yes, but you don't have the limitation of segregating that money in a blight set aside, which limits its uses.
How much is that blight set aside? What percentage? Is that like 40?
It's 40, for Guthrie County, it's 42, and so these phases are in, housing's in Guthrie. So it's 42.89%. It's a material number.
Oh, there it is right there. Okay.
So, just as a cross check, take the 10 million in row 1 times the consolidated levy, $31.60. That gives you roughly $316,000 a year. 16 in this table is shown as the $180,000 in column E, plus the blight set aside amount in column J. 180 plus the 135 is the 316 number. So that's what this shows. just in turn, the next sheet with the green shading at the top, this is a listing. It'll make you gasp a little bit because it's a large number, but these are the projects the city has funded with TIF dollars over the past 15 years only. So the main one is the row 3, City Hall, Library, Police Facilities, and the Aquatic Center. The housing phases are in rows 5, 8, and 10. Row 10, that financing included not only housing phase 3 infrastructure, it included sewer work, storm sewer work, and some street improvements. Phase 3 is noted at the right side, was about $2,370,000. But these are your other big highlights are the downtown street infrastructure in row 6. Carl Chevrolet in row 9. I guess the purpose in showing this really is to show that old urban rural area money has accomplished a lot. So,
Beside, Chip, I'm glad you brought these things up, that we can add to that the development agreement that we had, the TIF development agreement.
no question, that's clearly not included here, correct?
Thank you, Chip.
These are just capital projects.
It is valuable information, thank you.
So the bound handout, just while we're on the map, maybe, the very last sheet shows a map, and I know this, Forrest, probably gonna get on my case about this, but it doesn't include the new housing, so it's current as of 2021, so it'll get updated based on last year's purchase of McGowan land and then the Tibbin land as well. So that yellow area, it's 1991, that's the old area that has no sunset, that's really valuable to the city. So that's just a for that. It's basically the entire city except a few carve-outs. So the navy line is the corporate limits, and the rest are the various areas of the urban rural area, various plans. If you don't mind going back to the beginning, page 3 of 16 is so that what this lays out is the existing bond issues and development agreements that are paid by TIF. The column on the far right column shows the elevated TIF debt obligations are just over $2 million through fiscal year 28-29, and then they drop down pretty significantly after that. So this is, when we're structuring debt for the 4th phase, this is what we have to take into account when looking at how that debt will be funded, how it's paid for, how it fits in with your other debt picture that's outstanding. The next page 4 of 16, what this lays out, there are, I should really say, I appreciate you guys taking time to meet this evening, because I know it's a special meeting, and I know it's unique, and this is a really important decision, and I want this to get laid out right for you guys.
Good job.
We want it to be handled right. Forrest and I know Warren, so we just appreciate your taking time for the meeting. So, what this lays out on the summary page, the first 2 scenarios assume the base bid only, built out over 6 years. The second 2, C and D, are the base bid only and assume a 10-year build out. The last 2 are the entirety, the full scope that Forrest had laid out on this material. So this has the full 63 lots. I might be too conservative on this, but on those 2 scenarios, I assume a 10-year build out. You can see the infrastructure costs that are laid out in column E. The land cost is in there as well as the Harlem Street sewer. What I've assumed for a median home valuation is in column D, the same for each scenario. And what I can just focus on, kind of comparing scenario A and B, the distinction between those two is one thing really. Scenario A has the initial project cost funded by a short-term project note for 3 years. The benefit of that is if you assume a 18, 19, or 20-year structure for the long-term debt, you have 3 years where you still have a positive TIF cash flow, you still have TIF dollars available. But if you assume an 18-year overall structure and you take out the long-term debt in 2026, you have 18 years from that 2026 date. And that makes a very material difference because we're heavy on TIF debt through 2029. We get more years in the out years, like through 2045 or 2046, you've got a lot more years of no other debt that's outstanding during that time period. So what's the benefit? Even setting aside interest rate considerations, which may be lower, they may be the same, they may be higher, you've got a lot more flexibility from a financial and budgetary standpoint to handle that future TIF debt if you can push more of the debt in those out years. So I'll just compare two numbers. In column H, these compare scenario A, it's the net TIF cash flow after this debt's paid. So not before, this already takes into account the estimated debt service payments. And I've assumed a borrowing rate on the long-term debt of 5%, which is, I think, fairly high or conservative. If you get 3 or 4, this assumes 4 more years. So if you have 4 years of TIF cash flow to pay the debt on scenario A, the net TIF remaining is over 24 million. If you go to long-term debt right away in scenario B, so do the long-term debt right away in 2023, that net TIF cash flow is 14.8 million. So that's a difference of about $9.5 million. There's a drawback because you have 2 sets of financing costs, and nobody likes that, but I just want to be very upfront with that. I think that drawback would just offer the council, I think that drawback is worth taking it on or handling it.
It's gonna be offset by, if you had an extra $9 million in TIF.
It's immaterial.
$9 million to finance it.
No way.
Do you have that number approximately where it could be, I mean, going off of a 5% interest rate, what that would,
Issuance costs or interest costs?
to have those two finance, like, what are we
It'd
talking
be
about? So we can compare,
$100,000.
hey, we're talking 9.5 million in TIF versus paying an extra
Another 100,000 approximately.
100,000, okay.
So I think it's pretty, there is a cost, but I think it's a pretty decent cost comparison if you look at it that way. There's similar differences between C and D and between E and F. I think assuming that 7.4 million, the bids come in that range, that is doable from a project scope. It's a lot to take on, though, I guess I would just say. So that's a big decision that I can't tell you as a council how you want to approach that, but
And this
this offer makes me go over.
is this based on, and this is based on the new map, right, that we looked at last time?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at it, I'll just go through one of these. I'm not going to go through all because it's too tedious, but the next page, page 5 of 16, if you look at column J, those kind of medium blue shaded cells toward the bottom of column J, we get those 4 extra years of payments to apply toward the TIF debt for several reasons. This assumes you do short-term debt in 2023. It's taken out with long-term debt in 2026. Under Iowa law, you have to pay GO bonds off within 20 years. So we can't structure the debt now in 2023 and pay it off that far out. There's not enough time in there. So we get those 4 years, extra years of payments, and you can see there's still net TIF remaining in the far right column. So it's total TIF revenues less the TIF debt, including the debt for housing phase 4. What remains is in column N. So it's positive each year throughout. It's very positive, you know, when you get after FY 29, FY 30, out of those years. So the fact that you get those 4 more years, I think gives you a lot more flexibility. You don't have the 11-year window to deal with on the debt having to be paid off within 11 years. That's why the existing debt's debt heavy for the next few years, because we structured it to get it paid off so quickly.
And that's just on the base bid, right?
This is just the base bid only.
Because if I keep looking at the full bid, we're not so fortunate when it comes to revenue available.
That's right. That's page 10 of, excuse me,
9,
page 9 of 16. So this assumes a full build out. Might be too conservative, and that assumes it's built out over 10 years evenly. Those in column N, you see there's some negative TIF cash flow years in the early years. If you did the alternate, sort of the second part of phase 4, there's a lot more, you've got a lot more room to work with in terms of the TIF cash flow if that's done in 2027 or 2028.
And of course, the big unknown is the bids.
That's right.
That's the big unknown. So,
So you've got about a month until you'll get those in late April. So I thought you probably would want some time to think about this.
so sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
it's a big decision.
I'll keep it brief, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So a couple other statistics, I guess we'll say. This debt service as a percentage of the net TIF available, it uses net TIF available is in column M on any of the spreadsheets. It takes up about 19.5% of the available TIF. If you look at the obligated TIF for the next out to like 2046, if you look at the obligated TIF versus the available, after this debt's in place, it uses about 50% of the available TIF. So there's still flexibility there. And this keeps the budget at the threshold that you established for FY24, and I think we assume 3% growth. I'm pretty sure as council you won't do 7% every year, so.
Don't say that.
Just going to be clear on what I assumed. But that's really it. I'm happy to, if you have other questions, I'm happy to answer those, or happy to approach this analysis in some other way. Anything you want to?
Yes, I do have some follow-up comments. That's okay.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you,
This is
Jeff.
a
Thank
very
you.
comprehensive study and good for every council member to later take home and study and
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mayor and Council, I did just have some follow-up on the status of the rest of the project. We put together preliminary plans and specifications, reviewed those with the mayor and Jim Henderson and Matt on Friday. Distributed those also to seat members, some seat members, so we're getting comments back from them. Distributing them to utility, we received comments back from them. If any council members want to see those plans and specifications, Ash and Matt have those electronically. You can get those from them if you want.
Did we already get those?
true.
I just sent them to Ash, so, and Matt, so I don't typically send things directly.
Did you send them out? Because then I asked, is that the same thing I asked if we would have copies here?
Yeah.
Is it the same document?
Mhm.
Okay.
You sent them out already?
Yeah, he sent them
Electronic.
by email.
Electronically.
Should have.
Yeah,
Okay, but
Yeah.
I've got an extra copy on my desk if somebody wants that.
Thank you.
Forrest, can you explain to Corey on the sewer? He had a question about how deep it was and we're talking, you're changing that, or Jim, has Jim talked to you? about
No,
that?
Jim hasn't talked to me about it.
Oh, so we had a meeting on that on Friday, so there was a sewer going between the houses on the
Yep,
cul-de-sac.
yep.
So we got rid of that, we're moving it, to go deep down the north-south street on the east side of the development.
Okay.
But we're going over the gas and the raw water main, that's gonna be hanging up there 20 foot in the air, so we're gonna auger a bore underneath the gas and the water with the sanitary. So we aren't open cutting over into a high pressure natural gas 20 foot in the air. Didn't wanna do that very bad.
So what's the deepest depth that you guys,
So at the very
That you're
north
looking
end,
at.
we're gonna be 30 foot deep.
I was gonna say, it's gonna be 30 plus, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
And Jim would rather have that than have 20 plus between the homes.
I'd agree with that, yes.
So yeah, we made that change. I sent a comment out to the seed members and staff about that late Friday, that we were changing that change. So if you get those plans and see that, that we changed that.
And so how far are you gonna carry that depth? Because I know deep is money. So if it.
So yeah, we're shallowing it up as fast as we can as we go south.
Okay.
Yeah, and laying in minimum grade, we're laying the sanitary minimum grade, 0.4%.
So I got this in front of me here.
Okay.
So like where that detention pond is, are you coming on the backside of that? Is that what you're?
No, we're going right down the middle of the street.
Right down the middle of the street?
Yep.
Gotcha, okay.
And Councilman Kirkpatrick, Matt has a set of plans if you want to see
Yeah,
those or an
but-
email.
Yeah.
And Kevin Sargent reviewed them over the week and gave us some comments this afternoon, things too, so I'll be responding to them as well. So that's kind of where we're at with the plans and specs. A couple things that are on the agenda for April 10th for council consideration. One is on the Tibbins property, we're demolishing the house and putting a street through the house. But they want to leave the barn over there. So we're gonna have an accessory building without a primary house associated with it. So that's kind of not allowed to have accessory building without a house associated with it. So it's something for the council to think about between now and then is the Tibbins want to keep the barn, but the house is not lived in at the moment. So
What's their reasoning for keeping that? Is it,
the tenant farmer is using the barn.
livestock or something?
Yeah,
or-
yes.
So-
Tom Gavin
Oh,
rents
Tom.
pasture and runs cattle up there. I think the pens around the barn is what he uses primarily, the one that's sold in the barn.
Forrest, did you ever check on the barbed wire situation?
So there's number two.
Number two.
So, number two, the council passed an ordinance in August of last year not allowing barbed wire within the city limits of Stuart. So you are annexing the Tibbin property and the Wamble that we're looking at, they're running cows in both of them, in the Tibbin and north of the subdivision as well, north of the Wamble part. And when we did phase one, we have barbed wire keeping the cows from coming into people's houses. So the other thing, April 10th will be, what's your thoughts on allowing field fence next to those pastures in the backyards of these homes? Three choices. One is 6 strings of barbed wire, which is the cheapest. 2 is the woven fabric with like 1 or 2 strings of barbed wire at the top. Or the third is the woven wire and no barbed wire on it.
Are we
So,
sure it's not excluded with ag land?
It's not, I checked.
Okay, because I know Hicks's have it. and I
They're
still
probably
got it up in their mind.
Yeah, that was all
I think
done
they're
before
grandfathered.
August, before the ordinance
Did you
passed.
say they're probably grandfathered in?
Yeah, I imagine that barbed wire is older than our zoning code.
Okay.
So the only way that can be waived is by the council agreeing to waive it according to ordinance. So
So that's all the fence up there from phase one, everything. So we're talking where Belton lives,
Right.
they're tearing in all that out there.
that's all currently barbed wire.
It's
So
not
this is-
6 strand though, is it?
I think.
It's mostly 36 or 48-inch woven wire and 2 bars is what most of it is.
I thought it was just like 4 or 5 strand.
Oh, could be, huh?
Could be,
That
could
would
be,
be-
yeah.
I don't
See
know.
like a cow in your yard.
I've jumped over it a bunch of times, so.
I guess Councilman Doyle, I didn't count the strands, so you might be correct. So that, I'm just something for council to be thinking about as April 10th will need to, or if you have some thoughts now. But
I was gonna say, even with that being said, doing the base bid, and leaving that barn out there, I mean, they probably have barbed wire out there too. I mean, they wouldn't be grandfathered in on that, would they?
no, they wouldn't. We'll need to put barbed wire along that
Somewhere
whole
here,
piece,
yeah.
along that whole thing, keep from coming onto the road.
Yeah,
So that's along that whole east of the green, and then if we do the blue across the north and down the west side of the blue. Yeah,
it's a lot of fencing,
that's a lot of fencing.
yeah.
Yes, yes it is. And we need to put some sort of fence, keep the cows
Right,
coming in,
right.
but
And that's all city expense?
that'd be all part of the project cost. Yeah, it would be done by the contractor doing everything else.
And the city picks up all of that though?
Yes, as part of the project, it would be, yes, it would. Same as the contractor putting in the sewer in the storm and regrading the lots, putting this fence up.
And then are we responsible, I mean, I'm just going like, isn't it an old farm thing that when you stand in the middle of yours, you're responsible for the right half of the fence for maintenance?
But that
It
isn't,
is, but probably not
that's
for
a
this.
custom
Yeah.
and it doesn't apply at all in an urban setting.
Yeah,
Like a gentleman's handshake type, you know?
it might be hard for us to lock, we want you to pay for this fence so we can.
I'm saying, there's a lot of fence there.
I know.
And
There's a lot
who
of
pays
fence.
for the demolishing of the house?
That's
Part of
part of
that
the
cost.
project as well, yeah.
And did we figure that in before, or is that something new? Cause I thought the street was not coming as far as the house, I thought it was coming in.
Well, it was originally going to be right on the line between the two properties, and the decision by C basically, and input from the school district was to shift that, put lots backing up to the school property and shift that road so it lines up about with the driveway that's there now.
As planning and zoning that primarily wanted it to go farther east, they were concerned about the blind.
Yeah, a little bit of side distance on like.
Somebody's got connections with the fire chief, maybe we can just burn it. Take that
Maybe.
asbestos.
It's not a bad thought,
There's not asbestos.
you have to test. I
So-
think that's a requirement to burn, you have to test.
So you're saying it's in the pricing to do the fencing around the
Yes.
whole thing. Now, we was just talking about, what about like on phase one or whatever?
There's,
Is that,
there's fence there.
that's theirs
Oh.
though, or would that be the city's?
You talking about Wamble phase
When we
one?
did
Yeah,
those,
Wamble
Yeah,
phase
when we
one.
did phase one and phase
barbed
two.
wire was legal back then.
Yeah, barbed wire was legal back then.
You guys changed
And
the
we put
rules.
barbed
They
wire
have
fence up.
Tierney.
I just, yeah, I like the Tiernans and I think Brian Belton has some back there, and I don't know if this is something that they know about, and I'd hate to just like, here, now you gotta put more fence up or something, you know what I mean? Just an unexpected expense. So I didn't know if the city has to go to them and say, hey, your fence isn't in compliance, you need to
I'm assuming that if there's barbed wire in the fence already, like instances like this, that
Forward.
it's grandfathered in
The
Okay.
ordinance,
yeah,
Okay.
before the ordinance change, yeah.
So speaking of burning this house, is that something that Ash could reach out to the fire chief and see if that's, I mean, if it's a cost save, you know,
Big cost save.
a huge cost save, and it's training hours for them, if that's,
Exactly.
I don't know if it's
We
possible.
don't get
but-
enough houses to burn as it is, so.
Right, so Ash, is that maybe something you can reach out to the
Yes.
fire chief and
Yes.
just discuss with him?
Yeah, if the council decide to do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, if that's something we decide, I mean, that,
Yes.
it's a huge cost. I
Yes.
mean,
I'm sure the fire would like to do that.
What,
We
I
have
don't, but I
something-
don't know if the fire department can do it, I mean.
Oh, I'm gonna check with them.
But yeah, I mean, if you
When
could
we-
just discuss it to see if that's an option.
when would you need to know, Forrest?
If we had a decision at the April 10th meeting, that would be
Okay,
good.
I was gonna say, how quick do you need that house gone?
We
We got time.
got time, sometime
Okay,
this summer.
Okay.
I'm sure they
that'd be
can find
good.
time, but if you call the fire chief and find out.
My final comment is, in the past, the Stuart Municipal Utilities has contributed funds towards the water main portion of the cost of the project. Not 100%, but a percentage, and over time, I did bring that up to the utility a couple months ago. But right now, CHIP's numbers do not include any contribution from the utility.
Did they give you any indication?
No, not really, one way or another, but I didn't know if that's something, if the council wants me to at least go to the next board meeting and talk about.
I don't see why not.
I think it'd be nice, since considering they get the revenue
I was gonna
from
say they.
having that, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
let's put a little skin in the game. And,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, it would be nice, because, yeah, they are receiving the revenue, so they should, you know, you would think that they would want to contribute if they're gonna benefit from it.
Okay. I'll, there's a next, board meeting in April.
Yes.
Ash, if you let me know when that is, I'll get you the stuff.
Yes.
Any other questions on up here?
Thank you, Forrest.
Can I ask one question that's a little bit outside of it? Does this include any playground equipment or park equipment?
It does not.
Okay. Are you guys good with that? Just,
Yeah,
Put
we
an idea
did
on the
talk
table.
about that.
have you, okay.
We have discussed about putting a park at the end of that Tiernan Trail. But I guess we didn't talk about what we was going to do with it, yes.
Where did that soccer discussions go?
Did we include it in the 120,000? I think we did, Chip.
Soccer complex.
That's for over here.
We didn't add it in.
But
not into this,
Yeah.
it was in something else, wasn't it?
No, that's what
I-
they're
I-
asking,
I
is if it
recall-
was included as part of the funds from the soccer
I
field.
recall that.
Do you have all the figures that we had so much for the restroom? The lights?
I don't think it was in there.
Well, can you give it to Ash, because now with a welder, and see if we can get lights out there, soccer complex.
But we could be wrong.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there for the community park where the.
Is this
That's
something,
Go ahead.
sorry,
I'll have it in
is this
about
something
30
that we
seconds.
could, maybe, I don't know how much the city gets from Guthrie County on grants. Is that something we could be looking at there?
I've applied for a grant.
Well, I'm not saying this year, but, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, maybe next year it's something that we could apply for a grant
I have.
through them. I mean, I
I
don't know that we applied too much. I mean, last time we tried some marketing, maybe, that was Adair County, but,
I just turned it in a few weeks ago.
okay.
Jim came to me, had picked out some park equipment, and I applied for the Guthrie County
Yeah,
grant.
I mean, it's something to look at for next year
I
as we're
had thought
building.
we had talked about some
Yeah.
park equipment
Yeah.
that,
And I remember in that meeting, we had it included. But we'll check with Chip.
yeah, I think any grant that we apply for, I mean, you'd be applying for all kinds of grants.
Okay. Is
Yeah,
that it?
about that.
You guys will have to, I'm not sure what you mean by these
Parks
parts.
improvement, gravel, plumbing, lights, bathroom, and nothing else. Oh, over here, slight, something about over here.
I'll clear up top.
There,
That's been for.
question mark.
think that was it.
Yeah,
I
I
remember we talked
remember,
about.
now I
Yeah.
remember what happened.
Let's see.
That we're not gonna do something, we're gonna check on doing something, and after we did a check on it, we're gonna apply that money back,
Okay.
because we're not gonna do it, do you remember what it is?
It was buying that land for like a parking.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
I'm glad we have good memories.
Can you send that
That's why I put it, but yeah.
But I,
back? Then on the lighting's $20,000.
Yeah.
I'm working with the welder over there. We can use existing poles. We already got the arms. He's got 12 lights. So it's a matter of just putting in a cement post and then possibly a light on each end of the building and wiring it. So I think we'll be a lot less than
Is the
20,000.
utilities helping? I don't
Yeah.
remember